Why do you say we're going to experience something like that, and how? Walk us through the steps of how hyperinflation could happen here again.
Sure. Well, the problem that we're having right now is that treasury bonds are at an extremely high price level. That means that their yields are very, very low. Treasuries are in a bubble. Now, the reason they're in a bubble is because when the toxic asset situation happened back in 2007 and 2008 because of the housing crisis.
Right.
During 2008 and 2009, basically what the Fed did was it purchased those toxic assets at 100 cents on the dollar and gave banks, especially the too big to fail banks, it gave them cash. And those banks turned around and used that cash to buy treasury bonds. Also, the Fed has been, practically giving money away by keeping rates at 0.25%. I mean, that's lower than inflation rates. So in a very real sense, it's free money.
Right.
And so the banks have been taking this money, and instead of lending it, which is what the Fed wants, these banks have been taking that money and lending it to the federal government by way of treasury bonds.
Buying treasuries, yes.
Exactly, because treasury bonds are the way that the government finances itself, finances its deficits. So what is happening? Treasuries are in a bubble.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have to keep in mind, treasuries are debt. Sophisticated financial people call it, assets. They call bonds assets, as if that prees up what it actually is. And what it actually is a debt. Now, it's becoming increasingly clear that the United States government will not be able to pay its treasury bonds, its debt, because it's just too much debt.
Right.
Right now, the United States government owes something in the neighborhood of about $15 trillion in treasury bonds. That's between treasury bonds and also its commitments to Social Security. That's $15 trillion is more than the gross domestic product of the United States. The United States government is furthermore going into debt at a rate of about 1.4 trillion per year. They did it in 2009 in order to do TARP and all the stuff that they did then. They did it again, they're doing it now in 2010 with the stimulus package and healthcare and now this infrastructure stuff. They'll probably do it again in 2011. Now, no economy in the world can maintain 10% GDP deficit indefinitely. At some point, that bubble is going to burst. Now, there are only two ways that you can repay an unpayable debt. Either you can ask the person who holds that debt to take a haircut, that is, receive less money, or you can repay the debt in something that is worth less than what you took the debt out originally. Now, since the United States, is the issuer of the reserve currency, the United States could effectively begin to devalue the dollar in order to be able to make payment on these gargantuan debts. And it seems increasingly clear that that's the only way out, because the United States government cannot default on its treasury bonds. It can't for political reasons.
Right.
So the only exit is devaluation of the dollar somehow. Everybody knows this, and everybody in the financial world, in the bond markets, is basically playing a game of chicken, or more appropriately, they're playing a game of musical chairs. They're passing around these treasury bonds, and they know that eventually the music is going to stop, and these treasury bonds are going to collapse in price. Now, what I've been arguing is, if there's this collapse in price, where are all the dollars going to go to? I mean, if you have something that is collapsing in price, you sell it. You take that cash, and you want to park it someplace safe. Now, traditionally in investment circles, the safest investment is a treasury bond.
Yeah, treasuries, right.
Exactly. But if a treasury bond is declared unsafe, if a treasury bond becomes a toxic asset, where would you park your money? Well, commodities, oil, gold, silver, platinum. I mean, that would be the smart place to put your money, right?
Real things.
Exactly. Now, if you take that train of thought to its logical conclusion, what happens? Well, people exit treasuries, just dumping treasuries and taking their dollars and quickly trying to buy up commodities in order to maintain some value to what they have. And, that will mean that oil will shoot up, gold will shoot up, silver will shoot up, as well as wheat, copper.
Food, right.
Exactly. And of course, when those commodities shoot up in the financial markets, it's reflected in the supermarket. You go down to the A&P and a loaf of bread is going to cost you $10. You go down to the Exxon, and it's going to be $10 a gallon for a gallon of gas. So what happens in a situation like that? Well, it becomes hyperinflationary very quickly. And when I started off this conversation referring to the stagflation period of 1979, it seems to me that is what it will look like at first. At first, commodity prices, gasoline, food will start rising in price. And you'll start having more and more lines for gasoline, lines for food, and inflation will start picking up. Now, a lot of people disagree with me because they say, well, you need more money, you need more M2 money or M3 money, and they go on to give a very technical explanation as to why you need more money in the system to create hyperinflation. But anybody who lived through the period of 79 can tell you that they didn't need to create more money for an internal imbalance in the economy to show up and be reflected in inflated prices of consumer goods, of necessities. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So the idea that you need more money in the system is sort of like, it's sort of like whistling Dixie in the dark. You don't really need more money. There's enough money in the system. And if we have these imbalances where all of a sudden people panic and they exit treasuries and they go into commodities, then the American economy is in deep, deep trouble. And hyperinflation would be the logical end game for a situation like that. And if hyperinflation happens, then it will be bad. It will be like 79, but magnified.